This
Good evening.
conference will now be recorded.
There you go.
Good evening.
You're on, Tom.
Okay, well, as you see the cover of the book, the title Pandemic to Pandemic 1918 to 2020. Okay, Dave, I'll let you talk about the photo.
Okay, on the cover.
Chet Swear.
Yeah. Well, we were looking for some kind of a cover, and because we were using the Cuba Patriot files for our basis for our book, I thought, well, we ought to have a picture of the Patriot building on there. So I found an old ink drawing made by Chet Swear, who was an art teacher in Cuba for many years. Many of you know him. That he made us a commission when we owned the Patriot to put on a Christmas card. So we used that and a version of the thing. So that's about it for this. We didn't know what the cover was either, really. So we figured out there's 102 stuff in there. So it's not a lot of editorial, but there is advertising, and Tom Taylor is responsible for that. So we'll let Tom.
Okay, well, I did a book a couple years ago on the effects of World War II that in Cuba that was located in, I found them in the Cuba Patriot that's located in the Historical Society. So so that's when I got my start. I'm not a writer, but I can take photos. So what I did is I took photos of the different stories about the World War II. And so from that, I learned, decided during the pandemic of this year in March, I thought, with the shutdown or hibernation, I decided that I needed something to do to keep busy. So I went to the Historical Society and started, I thought, well, I could do 100 years of local history of ads that were found in the paper of local businesses, service groups, various ads that kind of give a historic sample of what was taking place, what people were buying, what people were doing. So I was telling Dave about it, and he said that he would like to be involved. So that's what we started working together. It took me about a week to do each decade. So there's 12 decades. So roughly the length of the shutdown to put the book together. Then Dave worked on doing the editorial work. So do you want to take it from there, Dave?
Yeah, okay. I guess we can do that. Tina, can you bring up page 47 on your?
Yes.
You're right there, right? Yeah.
Oh,
let me get
back one.
That's 59. Okay, there you go.
All right. Yeah. Well, we were trying to figure out how we would divide the book. We decided we'd do it into decades. It'd be a lot easier. It just seemed like a natural division place to do it. So we started with 1910 and we had a page for 1920s, 1930s and everything. The 1930s was probably my best page that I liked the best because it related to a lot of things that were involved with myself, having been born in the 1930s. That must have been a mistake because I don't really feel that I was born way back then. But anyway, if you look at each we call them the decade pages, the 1930s called the Great Depression. And if you look at that page, it kind of gives a brief description of what was going on in the United States. It talks about Franklin Roosevelt was elected president in 32 and his New Deal and stuff like that. And he was trying to end the Great Depression. There was a big problems then too. So we make reference to that slightly in there. And then we had to talk about the natural disasters. There was a huge drought in the Midwest at that time, in the Plain States. And then there's a great migration because all the topsoil was blowing off the Midwestern plains. And so there was a great migration. People were getting out of there by the end of the decade. And they said 2.5 million people headed west for California, simply abandoning all their farms in the Dust Bowl and everything. So that was kind of important things to do. But here in Cuba, New York, it created hard times for many, but the depression and everything else didn't really do a lot, didn't affect the general population of these small rural towns because we were pretty self-sufficient, actually, I felt. And there were people out of work and there were people who were going a little bit hungry, just as there are now. But we're fortunate to live in the area that we live in, that we can be a little more self-sufficient, and we've learned how to get by with less. And during that decade there too, the Cuba Union School District and all the rural school districts merged. We built a beautiful brand new school building and everything. We mentioned that in there. $305,000 to build a brand new school building on Elm Street. That's not a whole lot of money by today's standards. It was a mammoth amount of money. And oddly enough, the L.C. Whitford Company, still in business, was the contractor for that thing. And then finally, in 1939, those buildings were dedicated, and they made us a wonderful school building for many, many years, and it's still in use. And there's Emily. Hi, Emily. So the Chamber of Commerce decided to take great steps in trying to improve the business economy in Cuba. So they went searching for a small business to try to entice into Allegheny County. And they found a small electric company out in Cleveland, Ohio, Acme Electric Corporation. And they raised money locally and they planted Cuba. It was a community. Depression page, every generation that we go through, or every 10 years, you'll find as you go through the book, list important things such as I just mentioned for the 30s. In 1940s, we have the war years. We talked about the World War II in there, and the Patriot files. The Cuba Patriot, the small weekly newspapers took a very important part in the war, trying to generate patriotism and get people rallied up and raise money for the war effort and stuff like that with savings bonds, et cetera, et cetera. And so we couldn't show you every page for the decade pages as we go through the book because we didn't feel there'd be time. But when you do get a chance to look at the book, we'd sure like to have you read those 8 or 10 pages that are there that take, they're the history part of it, the wordy history part of it. Now, Tom's going to talk a little bit about the ads and everything and what the ads have done in there. For instance, on page 21, Tom, let's see if we can, there it is. Page, Tom, do you want to talk about that? Or?
Yes, this is, as you notice, it's very wordy. In 1919, the Cuba Electric Company, I have no idea when the Cuba Electric Company was formed. But you can see the lady there has to show you the coffee pot. Now the next item down, I have no idea what that is. I was thinking it might be to warm a baby bottle, but the next one looks like a little heater. Next one down is an electric motor, electric iron, and an electric, toaster. So can you read that? Is that big enough to read the wording?
On your screen?
Yeah, I'm wondering that if people can see, the wording on that. It's the first ad, it's for the electric company. It says, "The cool way, a handy way. Touch a button and your tea or coffee is made. Your bread is toasted. Your sad iron is heating. A dozen other things are done. Also, you might have a bright, clear light just where you want it. No heat, no smoke, no fumes." And then the next ad is the Glenwood. That's quite an invention there. That's a stove that uses coal and gas. So in the wintertime, you cook with coal. That keeps the house warm. But you don't want to cook with coal in the summer, so you just switch over and cook with gas. What a technology! So that was sold in Cuba at William C. Warren. Now I'm not sure where that business was located. Do you know, Dave, on what block or whatever, what address?
I think it was on East Main Street, Tom. I'm not sure, though. I haven't been able to pin that
Okay.
down.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also notice the style of the women clothes that the women wear in 1919 when they're cooking a meal.
There you go. There's my co-editor here. I think
Okay, so
that Glenwood stove thing, when we talked the other day about how in the summertime, of course, they didn't want to have that coal fire going or wood fire going all the time. So that was the reason to have the gas come in. But also, I mentioned to you, and you weren't aware of that fact, that many homes around Cuba had what they call summer kitchens. And there would be a kitchen off the back end of their house, like a small addition almost, sometimes just connected by a narrow hallway that would be where when they had to use the wood stove year round to cook with, they could do it out in that room and it wouldn't heat the whole house up as much. So summer kitchens is a thing that we learned from that. Let's see, where was I going with that?
we probably can move on to the next slide. Okay. Okay, now this one has 3 different ads to cover the same time, 59. So first one, we have the Little Theater of Cuba presents Noel Coward's 3-act play, Hay Fever. That was at the Opera House. And then, does it say? Yeah, okay. The admission was 35 cents. So, of course, the Opera House was where it is today, same Opera House. At that time, there was a group of local people that had their own theater, local theater group. So then in 1935, we find in the middle an ad for Shriver's. Now, you all remember Shriver's when they were on Main Street? This was when they were on Main Street. You could buy 2 pounds of hamburger for 35 cents. And the bologna was 20 cents. And at that time, Shriver's was located on East Main Street where the new renovated credit union is. So they moved, Shriver's moved, I'm not sure just when that was, maybe in the 70s, you know, Dave? But
Yeah.
they moved their location to, or they're located on Genesee Street. So for many years it was Shriver's, now it's the Giant. So Shriver's Meat Market was in Cuba for a long time. And I remember you'd go in there and you could order a pound of hamburger and they would grind it right up and fix it up and have it all ready for you rather than today it's prepackaged. Everything is prepackaged. So now the next slide would be the Peerless Theater, which would be in the same spot where the Cuba Theater is, which is now, I don't know if anybody's there now. It's a smoke vape shop, across from Dr. Glotty's office. But in those days, you could see an Earl Grey film, watch Katharine Hepburn, and on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you could see Shirley Temple. So there was just an example of the entertainment that people had back in Cuba in the 30s, and the price of food. Can you imagine buying 2 pounds of hamburger for 35 cents today? I think the package it was in would be 35 cents. Okay,
Yeah, it actually says 31 cents, Tom.
it's 31. Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
That's inflation. So in the next slide is the grand opening of the Cuba Theater. Now, do you want to talk about that, Dave?
Sure. Part of the reason that the theory behind that's all advertising in this book is the fact that the reader has to kind of go through the book and remember things progress along as, and we wanted to show and have the reader use a little bit of their imagination to realize that the Peerless Theater in 1935, by the time you get into the 1940s, 41, it says grand opening of the new Cuba Theater then. So it shows that there was a change in that part of the town. And the new theater opened on Friday, June 27th, 1941. And it's kind of interesting to look at the theaters, the movies that were playing then and everything. But as you look through the ads, you get an idea of how things are evolving in the community. Things are getting better. Different things are happening. It just kind of goes on and on and on. Around that same time, Hunter and Johnson took over the pharmacy store in the early 40s, late 30s, and they became the Rexall store. And all of a sudden, the Rexall store is selling gift items for Christmas and Mother's Day and things like that. So that's the reason for that ad in there. I had a phone call after the book came out from a lady who lives in Erie, Pennsylvania, and she said she really loved page 49 or page 69. She said that was oh, wait a minute. Page 76, I'm sorry. She said she just wondered what that was all about. In Cuba, on Friday, July 10th, Fairgrounds at the North Cuba Road. Now, everybody remembers where the expressway is now. There was just a big open field, and every year the circus would come to town and they would sit up there. And here's where the Beers Barns Circus came on July 10th, 1942. But what really sparked the interest of the reader they called me up about this ad was that she has a grandniece named Alice, who I think is watching this today. And she was the second largest elephant on second largest elephant. And she would be brought out on stage or in front of the public at noon on that day so that everybody could see her. Now, Alice, Aunt Mary was not talking about you being like an elephant. So rest assured there. All right. You know, the local paper also served as kind of a bulletin board. You see on that same page there, the public meeting, Friday evening, October, at the Village Hall. And there were items that needed to be discussed, like the erection of a roll of honor for our men and women in the national service. Now you read that, and you all of a sudden, if you've had any Cuba history background at all or seen any old pictures, you remember that in the park, Genesee Parkway, was a huge, big honor roll. And it listed every man and woman who was involved in the armed forces during World War II. So there was a public meeting to try to get that thing started. Again, Tom's thrown in here a meat market ad for the Quality Meat Market. That was down next door to the Cuba Theater. It's interesting to look at those prices again there. A beef roast at 19 cents a pound. That's not too bad. I think any of you ladies would love to go to the market nowadays and buy them for that. Where else do we want to go from here, Tom?
Well, we go to the next slide, which would be in 1956.
Yeah.
Okay. Where the block is now, which would be, it's a gift shop next to the Opera House. Randy Farrell owns that property now. So I'm not sure what the name of that Treasures, or that little, that's where Chamberlains Appliance was located. No, it was the next one. Because Bartlett Hardware was the first one, then the next one was Chamberlains Appliance. And you could, in 1956, televisions came out, and that was the exciting thing, to own a TV. So, and also, you can also notice how wordy the ad was. People had time to read, I guess. And also, Swarthouse sold TVs, and they were located on West Main Street. I believe that was Merle Swarthouse. So we had two TV dealers in Cuba at that time in 1956. At that time, people had an antenna on top of their home with a wire that would lead from the TV up to the roof to the antenna. So you could get, if you were lucky, you could get a station in Buffalo. And it would be, you know, the signal would come and go, and it would be spotty and fade in and out, but that was the early days of TV. You think what we have today when you can watch TV on an iPhone. So Swarthouse, they didn't stay in business so very many years, where Chamberlain Appliance was in business for many years, and they later, you can move on to the next slide. I think the next slide is, yes, okay. So Chamberlain Appliance also started Cuba Cable Company. So they constructed a tower that's up on Spring Street Hill, which would be in the East Hill towards Friendship. Up on, there was a tower that they built in the, I can remember seeing they cleared a path from the top of the hill all the way to the bottom. And so they hooked up, they ran a cable all over the village of Cuba, and you could get channel 2, WGR in Buffalo. That was channel 4, WBEN in Buffalo. Channel 5, WROC in Rochester. 6 would be CBLT, that's Toronto. Then 7, WKBW Buffalo. So that was the Cuba Cable was in business. Lauren Chamberlain had the business for many years, and then his sons Dennis and David ran the company at later years. So I guess what was to say the price was there? Can you see? It was like $5.25 a month, monthly charge, $5.25. So they were all the entertainment you needed right there. So so you could watch Toronto. That was interesting to be able to get Toronto news. So then we move over to the next slide, which would be the Cuba Lake Pavilion. That's when things were really rocking there in those days, in the 50s. So you had the parade of bands on Sunday, On Friday, you had the Cool Jewels. And Saturday, Al Checky. The Cool Jewels were more rock and roll, and on Friday night, and then Saturday would be Al Checky, and that was big band. And then on Sunday you had Satellites. The Satellites was a rock and roll band, and on Wednesday you had the Rhythm Boys. So I'm not sure about the Rhythm Boys, but it was 90 cents. It was 90 cents to get into the dance. Then on Sunday they had the Parade of Dance, which would be a number of bands that played throughout the afternoon and evening. So people came from all over to dance at the pavilion. They came from Buffalo, you know, Erie and Jamestown, Bradford, Olean. So it was always a busy place for dance night. And so the next slide down below would be Moonwinks, the reopening of Moonwinks. And you can see it was owned by Ozzie and Ann Bradley. They were the owners at that time of Moonwinks. And Betsy Morris was in charge of the food, and Helen Ingalls was a dining room supervisor. So you can see that was kind of in the 50s. That was one of the entertainments, a sample of the venues of Cuba entertainment. Cuba was a hopping town. Cuba was a hopping town in the 50s. You know, we had other places too. You had the skating rink that was up at the lake, and so there was a busy place. Got something, Dave, for that?
Okay, well, it was a hot spot. Moonwinks was a hot spot. The pavilion was a hot spot for sure. I'm much too young to remember all that stuff, so I just have to take your word for it, Tom. But
okay, Dave.
but I think that the point of the book now, I think that our listeners here tonight are finding out the point of the book is to have people who look through it. Mostly our audience is going to be, we realize, Cuba residents or former Cuba residents, and just want to have you have fun going through the book and recapping what was here, what was there to do, and who you could do it with. So it's really kind of it's been a fun journey to put the whole thing together. Let's go over to page 113. Oh, we're there already. Okay. There were things to do in the community, like the Rod and Gun Club had a turkey shoot every year. They had several other different functions throughout the year and everything, but they relied heavily on the local press to get the word out about that. There was no TV much. You know, local people in small towns couldn't afford to advertise a turkey shoot in Cuba, New York on a Buffalo radio station. So there was the town bulletin board was the local newspaper, and that's what we're trying to put across in this booklet here. Other things that you could do in Cuba were the Hotel Kinney bowling alleys. Now the Hotel Kinney building is long gone now, and the bowling alleys with it. They did finally open another bowling alley on the west side of town a few years ago, and that had a terrific fire and burned out, and has never been bowling again in this town. But it's kind of neat to remember those things that happened. Then the next ad there again is the Cuba Theater ad. I think, Tom, you must have liked it. You took a lot of pictures of these theater ads. You must be really good in the movies here.
Oh, I love yeah, the movie theater was very popular place to go. It was, you know, I think it was 20 cents for kids and 44 cents for adults to go to a movie. So there was movies every night of the week. And a lot of times it was double feature. Of course, one of the most famous movies of all time is Psycho. So Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, Farrah Miles. So, but I did want to add to the bowling, there was 4 lanes. It was at the Kenny, and it was very popular. the men and women groups leagues that would bowl. And then they would have pin setters. I think pin setter would get so much a game for setting pins. So that would be a job for young men, like high school seniors, juniors, or seniors could earn some spending money setting pins at the Kenny.
I think,
like you say, they later moved the bowling alley out on West Cuba.
right. I remember I set pins for a number of years when I was in high school, and I think we got 25 cents a game, or maybe it was only 15 cents. I'm not sure. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was a source of income for a lot of young people to.
Yeah. Well, you had to make sure, keep your eye open, because those pins would fly up. If you weren't far enough up in the air, that pin could fly up and hit you.
All right. Another I mentioned a while ago that local community bowl. Here again, the Cuba Fire Department says help the Cuba Fire Department help you. And they had an annual light bulb sale. Brings back a lot of memories for a lot of firemen or former firemen now in our community. They used to go door to door with a fire truck loaded up with boxes of light bulbs, selling them door to door to raise money to buy equipment for the fire department. My family owned the Patriot at the time in 1963 when this ad is showed here, and Tom took a picture of the ad where we were celebrating our 100th year of publication. The Patriot was 100 years old that year. It was started in 1863. Now that's quite remarkable, and to think that that paper is still producing today, and it's quite remarkable, really. But I remember we had an open house on a couple of different days during our anniversary celebration there, and it was pretty eye-opening to people to see what went in to produce a daily or a weekly newspaper each week, and the people were just thrilled to be able to come in and see that. I remember that. Nice memories come out of that.
Well, let me say, at the Cuba Historical Society, there's the collection of these old Cuba newspapers that date back, before 1918. And without that collection, we wouldn't be able to have this source for this information to save history. So Dave, could you explain how this came about? How the books were collection of newspapers are preserved at the Historical Society?
Sure. Well, what happened was I sold the family business in 1982, and the buyers weren't going to operate out of the old print shop that we had used for many, many years. So I kept the bound volumes of all the newspapers. Each year is bound in a big, large book. And I decided the best way to do it was to hang on to those books. And for a long time, I stored them in my home. And it takes up a pretty big area if you have 100 years of newspapers stored. But then for a number of years, they did not bind, the new owners did not have the publication bound at all. And so we had just a bunch of loose newspapers. And then we had the advent of people wanting to do more and more research at the library with the newspapers, and they wanted to have it on microfiche or microfilm. And that had never been done before with any of the papers in any generation. So when my father passed away, I took all the memorial money that he have been remembered by friends and fellow businessmen and stuff. And I turned that memorial money into microfilms, which are now on file at the Cuba Library, so that anybody can go into the library at any time and go through those films and even make copies of some of the pages and stuff like that. It's a very handy thing to have. Currently, the library, Tina can probably address that situation a little bit. We're looking into digitizing those files so that you can just go in now and type in Tom Taylor and you can find out everything that Tom did in Cuba.
There are a
Okay.
few that have been digitized through Fulton. Cindy, you might have been part of that project. So if you go to Fulton Newspapers, and I will say it's a really old website. It looks like it was made when the internet was very first invented, but they have a lot of old newspapers on there, and so there are a few years of the Patriot that you can search digitally through that site.
Very
But yes, we would love to get all of them digitized. It's a long range plan.
It's very cumbersome to go through that Fulton press, very hard to wade through it. You can get through it, you can find things, but it takes a great amount of time.
Yeah.
I like to go in, I go back down to the museum quite often and go through the files. And I find out that if I go down on a Sunday morning or a Saturday evening or something to look up one particular thing, I start going through that particular year's volume. And I'll be like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm still reading all the papers for that year. So it's kind of hard to just look at one thing and then leave again. So, where did we go after this, Tom? Oh, we were talking about the dairy days too.
Dairy days.
Yeah, page 137. There you go. June Dairy Month celebration. This brings back a lot of memories to a lot of people. The Cuba Patriot and the Cuba Chamber of Commerce actually went together at the very beginning, the very first dairy days, and they decided to have just an advertising campaign and have sidewalk sales and things like that. And it so happened that there was a circus in town that week, and so Bill Trimble, my brother-in-law, was the advertising manager for us in the paper at that time. And he went to the circus people and said, we're going to have a parade of all the milk trucks and everything else on Main Street on Friday night. Could you bring your elephants and your circus wagons up? And so that very first parade was kind of an impromptu thing with hometown talent and a visiting circus in there. And then it went on, and the Cuba Fire Department jumped in because they needed a fundraising activity. So it became the Cuba Fire Department and the Cuba Chamber of Commerce. And together they put on June Dairy Month celebrations, a week-long celebration in those days, went on for many years and brought in a great deal of money for the fire department and brought in a large number of people to our community to realize what a great place it is to live. I think that lately, times have changed so much that we don't have a whole week of dairy days anymore. We have a weekend or a 3-day weekend or something. And we do have sidewalk sales and things like that, but it's somewhat scaled down now. Any more that we need to talk about here in the book? I don't remember. I think we pretty much covered as you go through it, you'll find things like the different new little gift shops have opened up, and then you don't see any more ads about them or anything for many years. And then all of a sudden in that same location at 34 West Main Street or wherever, there'll be another shop pulled in. So you think there's always a trail of businesses and everything. And that's what Tom has showed here quite a lot by photographing all these ads and putting them in there. Do we have any questions from anybody, Tina? Did anybody?
If anyone wants to unmute themselves to ask a question, feel free, or you can type it into the chat if you'd rather. Do you guys
And-
want to tell them where they can buy it?
Oh yeah, the book is for sale at the Cuba Library, the Back in Time Antique Shop, and By the Light of the Moon Gift Shop, and again at the Palmer Opera House, which the Palmer Opera House and the Cuba Historical Society are both benefiting from the proceeds of this book. Tom and I put the whole thing together, and we got it printed, and all the proceeds from the sale of those books is going back to those two organizations so that they can maintain their museums. So we're happy for that part. Questions? Anybody?
Can you
Great.
and Tom bring one to Crystal River?
I can mail you one, Gail.
No, we want you to bring it down to us. Right, Bob? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob's been telling me some funny stories during this.
Muted, Bob.
Well, I'll call you, Dave.
Okay, Gail, thank you. Showing up tonight.
Hi, it's Jane, asking a question. Dave or Tom, did either of you ever talk with Marge Bly when she still lived right by the library? Because she, one time at the Current Topic Club, gave an unbelievable presentation about all of the businesses right in downtown in the village. And she knew the name of the proprietors and the name of the stores. And did anyone ever extract that information from her?
We did, Jane. I've got at the museum, we have an abstract of her whole talk that she gave, and her typewritten list of all the businesses. And I used to say that quite often to try to find out what was where, you know, in Main Street. Yeah, she did a wonderful job with that.
That's good to know. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Marge had a real nice program that she did. Was that Current Topic you said, Jane?
I'm trying to unmute me. Yes, it was a Current Topic. I was in that organization for a while and then I dropped out, but there were some wonderful ladies in that group.
Yeah,
Back
yeah.
overseas.
Good.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to give a plug for our publishing company too. I quite by accident online one night I saw an ad come through for 48-hour books, and I thought, what the heck is 48-hour books? And having been in the printing business, I was curious about how you could do a book in 48 hours. And so I started reading about it, and sure enough, if you send them a camera-ready text for a book or booklet or whatever, and they'll send you back a proof within a day or two, and then 48 hours after you return the proof to them with your okay on it, they will have the books on your doorstep. And it's just an amazing, amazing piece of production work. And I think that Tom and I are, Tom doesn't know all the details yet because I haven't let him in on the secret, but he and I are working on another book, Tom. And the next will be a picture book of just pictures, mostly I think street scenes of Cuba and maybe some of the important personalities around town and things like that. We have some fantastic old pictures of a lot of really neat things that were happening on the side streets in Cuba and the building of new houses and stuff like that. I did come up with one picture. I don't know if you can see it here, but there's about a 1927 photograph of Main Street that I was really interested in. I got my hair cut yesterday, and somebody had brought this into the barber shop and told Al Tucker, said, here, give this to Dave Crowley so that he can have it for the records in the Historical Society. So it's kind of a neat old picture in the cars and stuff. But we'll have a whole book, probably on, it won't be as thick as this current book, maybe only about 150 pages or something. But we'll have tons of pictures of Cuba, New York, old and new. So stay tuned for that.
And didn't you mention you wouldn't mind if people donated pictures?
Yes,
For
oh
that?
yeah, for bringing that up. Yeah, if anybody has pawing around in their attic or their cellar or their back of their closet, if they find an old box of pictures from great grandma or grandma and they would like to share them with us, I would really appreciate it, because oftentimes we find new pictures here and there, you know, in somebody's little. One thing that I'm specifically looking for is a picture of Our Lady of Angels Church under construction. Now, I live across the street, as many of you know, from the church, and there are no pictures that I know of the construction of that building, which was done in 1926 and 27. Now, that was the highlight of the birth of handheld cameras, Brownie cameras. Everybody had a little box camera. I'm just shocked that somebody in this town didn't take a picture of the construction of that building. So I think I'd pay $100 for a picture of that construction if somebody would get me a picture.
Challenge accepted.
Hey, all right, that's good. I hope I have to. It cost me $100. I really do. I wrote a history of the Catholic Church way back in, I don't know, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And I searched heaven and earth for a picture and could not find it. Even old parishioners that were in the neighborhood here, I asked them and they said, no, we never took a picture of it. Don't know why, you know, it's a shame. I found the other day a picture, going through some files, a picture of the construction of the elementary school on Elm Street. It's now our elementary school. It was the high school and elementary school for many years. But when that building was being constructed, I found a picture of them putting the brickwork on the tower still. So that was kind of neat to find. So anyway, if you have pictures, let me know. You could scan them and send them to me, or send me the actual photographs. We'll scan them and return them to you, or whatever. But I'd love to see anything that you might have, or give us a call or something and tell us what you got. End of that commercial.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Dave, it's Bob, and I've got some pictures of your and Wendy's wedding up in Auburn. If you'd like some more of the honeymoon, really.
I don't think we need to share that, Bob.
Okay.
You have Mayor Lattimore. Bob was our best man. Bob's and Gail stood up with St. and I when we were married 52 years ago next week, 51 years ago next month. And we had a nice time at their party, and I'm still indebted to them for throwing such a nice wedding and reception for us. And I can see on my screen here one of the kids that I got when I got that. I can see two of the kids that I got when I got that beautiful bride too. I inherited a beautiful family, and I'm very, very, very happy for that. I love you, Barry. I love you, Wendy. Okay, what else?
Well, seriously, send us a book and we'll send you a check. Send us a
Thank you.
book. You
I'll
have
do
the
it.
address, right?
We'll do it. I have your answer.
We want to see it. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Maybe I'll, maybe if winter gets tough enough around here, I'll drive down the way like you want me to.
You want to know I'm in shorts?
I hear that.
Okay, someone else asked a question.
Well, maybe we'll call it an evening. Thanks so much, Dave and Tom, for sharing your book with us. We really appreciate it. Good job.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tina, for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Good job.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Everyone in
you.
Cuba, take care.
Bye-bye.